Hello everyone, my name's Paula Halibicki and I'm a technical market manager with BASF, really focused on plant health fungicides and a member of the fungicide launch team for our brand new active ingredient, Revysol fungicide. And so I'm really excited to be able to be here to explain to you what really sets this new molecule apart from anything else on the market today. So today what we really want to talk about is why would BASF come out with a DMI fungicide? Second, I want to walk through how did we actually do that. So, what is Revysol? What makes it different from everything else that we see on the market today? And then the last thing I want you to think about as we go through this is how can this add value to your business and to your customers and to all of our farmers that we work with every day. So first of all, let's think back 40 years. If you think back, what were you doing 40 years ago? Maybe some of you were having your first kids. Maybe some of you weren't born yet. But if you think 40 years, that's a long time. But that is actually when the first DMI active ingredient was registered. So propiconazole is actually the first DMI that has been on the market. And if we look through this timeline of DMI fungicide registrations, we can see that even a lot of the products that are 40 years old are still integral components of the fungicide premixes we use today. So propiconazole is still a really important part of Syngenta's product focus, but they have a product there that's 40 years old. If we continue onto the timeline through to today, we actually can see that there's only one active ingredient that's less than 25 years old in this class. And so these DMI fungicides that we use in many of our premixes today are very old products and old technology. But we know that they are also integral components of these products. And so BASF really recognized that there was a need to innovate in this class. And so if we stop and look at the BASF fungicide innovation history, we see that BASF has a very strong history of innovative fungicides in all fungicide classes. So if we look at the QOIs or the strobilurins, we have, bar none, the best product on the market in this class with pyraclostrobin or headline. If we look at the SDHI class, for example, BASF really set the bar when we came out with Boscalid in 2003. And we really enhanced that class and have a very strong active ingredient with Xemium fungicide as well. Now, if we think about the innovations that are happening today in other companies, they're really focusing on this SDHI class. And so that's really where we're seeing most of the innovation today. What we haven't seen over the last 25 years or so is innovation in that DMI class. And so if we look at BASF's innovations in the DMIs, epoxyconazole is actually the fungicide that's used across more acres than any other DMI globally. But strangely, it's not actually registered here in the US. And so BASF really recognized that there was a need for a new innovation in this fungicide class that would really enhance our legacy of fungicide innovations. And so really excited to bring to you Revysol fungicide this season. So how did BASF actually come up with a new DMI fungicide? So when we think about developing fungicides, we normally think from an efficacy standpoint. So we want to make sure that the products we're coming out with will have efficacy against the diseases that we want to control. But when BASF was screening for a new DMI fungicide, one of the important things that we considered was the regulatory impact as well. And so we screened thousands of different fungicides and ended up on the active ingredient Revysol. And so what really is different about Revysol is the way that it moves. This is the first and only isopropanol azole in the class, and that really provides some differentiation that we'll walk through in the rest of the presentation today. So when you look at this isopropanol azole molecule, as I said, this is the first and only isopropanol azole within the DMI class. What's unique about it is this orange isopropanol link. And so other DMI fungicides do not have this isopropanol link, and so they don't provide the same level of flexibility that we see with Revysol. And so that level of flexibility really drives the fact that Revysol is broader, stronger, and longer than any other DMI fungicides we have today. So let's walk through each of those things. We're going to start with the broader spectrum. What does that mean? So when I say broader spectrum, I mean that it fits across more crops, so more opportunity to use across different markets. It controls a wide range of diseases in all of those crops, really the diseases that matter most to our customers. And the other really unique thing is that we've seen that Revysol can actually control DMI-resistant strains. So how does that happen? So as I mentioned, the thing that's unique about Revysol is the isopropanol link, highlighted here in orange. And this isopropanol link really provides flexibility that other DMI fungicides don't have. And so the way that I think about this is almost maybe like a vacuum cleaner. So if I think about in my household, we recently bought a Dyson stick vacuum. And for me, that has provided this flexibility with my vacuum. You know, the ball allows it to move in ways that my old vacuum couldn't. And so now I can vacuum around chairs and everything else, right? So it has a lot more use because of that level of flexibility. If we think about it from a fungicide perspective, essentially a fungicide has to fit into a binding pocket that's a specific shape. And if that fungicide doesn't have a level of flexibility, it may not fit across a wide range of those different binding pockets. So every pathogen has a different binding pocket shape, and so you have to be able to bend and flex to fit those different binding pockets. And so Revysol is very good at evolving and bending to fit all of those to provide a strong level of activity. And so what we see in terms of disease control, again, really controlling those diseases that matter most in these crops. So if we think of our row crop market, for example, in corn, really controlling those top diseases, gray leaf spot, northern corn leaf blight, southern rust, and even tar spot. Similar in soybeans and many other row crops, as well as our SPC markets, bringing a level of activity that we haven't seen before from many of these DMIs that are currently on the market. If we think about it in terms of the national perspective, when we look at our Wave 1 crops and add in the Wave 2 crops that will be upcoming on our registration timeline, we really will have an impact across the entire country in many different crop markets. So really providing an opportunity for yourselves and our customers as well. So the third thing that I talked about with broader is controlling DMI-resistant strains. And so this is really unique. So in the same way that different pathogens have different binding pocket shapes, a pathogen can actually change its binding pocket shape. And so when it does that, the conventional triazole or DMI that's being used to control it doesn't fit properly anymore. And so you actually have to flood that system in order to get that same level of activity. But because Revysol can actually bend and flex, when that binding pocket shape changes, then Revysol can also change to accommodate that shift. And so we still see control of DMI-resistant strains that have this resistance mechanism. So an example I have here is from an apple orchard in Michigan. This apple orchard actually has been resistant to DMI fungicides for a long time. And so when we brought Revysol to the researcher at this orchard, he was just absolutely amazed that Revysol is a DMI fungicide because of the level of activity that Revysol was bringing when no other DMIs have been able to control the apple scab at this orchard for many years. And so a really great example here in the US where we see control of DMI-resistant diseases. We also see activity on DMI-resistant powdery mildew in grape. And in Europe, one of the big issues that they're facing is septoria in wheat. And they're seeing resistant to DMIs with septoria. And Revysol is controlling many different strains of resistance. So hopefully you have a good idea of why Revysol is broader than many of the other DMIs on the market. The second thing I want to talk about is that Revysol brings a level of activity that is much stronger than other DMIs. And so by that, we're going to go through how it's much more fast-acting, how it provides both preventative and curative or post-infection activity, as well as being the strongest mode of action binding site. So first of all, fast-acting. So we know that these fungicides actually have to get into a plant. And so first of all, Revysol, based on its chemical characteristics, will actually bind quite strongly to the leaf cuticle or that waxy surface on the leaf. That means it's very rain-fast. But then because of our formulation, we actually have very fast uptake or movement into the plant. And so we can see comparisons versus ciproconazole or prothioconazole. And if we look 5 hours after application, we have over 4 times the amount of product in that plant that then can control those diseases. And because we move into the plant so quickly and can start attacking those pathogens so quickly, we have this really strong curative activity that we don't see with those other DMI fungicides. And so we have a really great example here. This is a corn plot that we worked with in Southern Illinois University. And these we intentionally applied 2 weeks after the VT or tassel application timing. So we knew that that infection had already occurred, and we knew that there was quite a bit of gray leaf spot pressure in this example. And so when we apply in this curative situation versus Trivapro, for example, or the untreated check, we can just see the level of curative or post-infection activity that Revysol molecule is bringing to the activity against gray leaf spot. And you really can see that physical difference in the disease pressure and how green the Revysol premix plants are as compared to the competitor. Now, we also did the same experiment where we applied in a curative situation to corn in one of our other field sites in Andrews, North Carolina. Now, Andrews is essentially at the bottom of this mountain range. It has corn on corn every single year, and we have incredible gray leaf spot pressure. So we really wanted to put Revysol to the test. And so in this case, again, we applied 2 weeks after VT, and we applied versus Trivapro and the untreated check. And you can see that Revysol brings a significant level of activity for gray leaf spot, even when in the untreated check we reach nearly 100% severity only 30 days after application. And so even in this area where we have really significant disease pressure, Revysol is really shining in terms of curative performance on gray leaf spot in corn. Now, the other thing I talked about was, essentially we're getting this strong curative activity because it's moving into the plant so quickly. But the other part of that is, how does Revysol provide this level of efficacy? And really it has to do with the binding strength.